I'm gonna make you a co-host, Rita, too, just in case.
Perfect.
Thanks, Liz. No problem. Okay, so I don't know. It's hard to tell how many people are going to join today, given all that's going on. So whenever you want to kick off, Rita, it's your call.
Okay, um, I would say let's get started. Maybe we'll just get started with our introductions. So I'll start. Uh, Rita Higgins, and with the Marion Institute, leading the charge here on the Carrot Project for Plymouth County. And it is always helpful too if everyone gets a chance to change their Zoom name and add the organization they're with. That helps us see who's in the room on the back end when we look back to see who participated, and also just helps anyone here today to kind of see who's here on the call. So I will start doing it myself because I haven't done it. If you haven't done it before, it's the three little buttons on your Zoom window, and then you scroll down to rename, and then you'll see there. So I've got Rita Higgins Marian Institute. So I will pass it to Liz Wiley.
Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Wiley with the Marion Institute Executive Director, and thank you all for being here and working on this project with us. We really appreciate your time and your insights, and everything that you add is so valuable. So thanks so much. And I'll go back to you, Rita, or should I just pass it to Joanne?
I'd say, oops, go ahead and pass to Joanne.
Hi, folks. Joanne from Old Colony Planning Council. We are, excuse me, we are organizing this project on behalf of our partners, including the county. Um, I will pass it off to Jill.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jill Slankus with Barrett Planning Group. We are the consultant team, part of the consultant team working with OCPC, Plymouth County Marion Institute, on the Regional Food System Assessment and Action Plan. Joining me today are my colleagues, Brenda Trollinger and Jean Charles. And we're also assisted by independent consultants of John LeBeau and Lydia Sasson, who are not on this call today.
Thank you. Let's pass it to Jared. Oh, he might be busy. How about we go to Kevin?
Hi, I'm Kevin Cogan from the town of Abington.
Great, thank you. Christine Keller.
Hi, I'm Christine Keller. I'm Director of Food Pantries for Catholic Charities in Boston. And yeah, that's all I gotta say.
Beautiful, thank you. And for anyone who has jumped in, we are just doing a quick round of introductions. So just your name and what organization you're with. So we'll pass it to Courtney Rocha.
Hi, everyone. I'm Courtney Rocha, and I am the regional coordinator with the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness, or MVP program. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining. Cassandra.
Hi everyone, I'm Cassandra Thayer. I'm the town planner for Cohasset.
Perfect, thanks. Jared.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jared Rogers. I am the Director of Development for the United Way of Greater Plymouth County. We are a community convener, and we also oversee direct services for parental and youth support programs, and oversee the local consumer program for the Brockton area.
Excellent, thank you. Now, the others that I'm going to be calling on don't have their screens on, so if you're not able to answer, that's okay, but I'll call out your name. Teresa Varnazaro.
Hi, Teresa. I am the Assistant County Administrator for Plymouth County.
Thank you. Megan Avery.
Hi, everyone. I'm the Senior Program Director of Healthy Living with the Old Colony Y.
Beautiful, thank you. Brenna.
Hi, everyone. I'm part of the consultant team with Jill and Barrett Planning Group.
Thank you. Howard Randall.
Hi, good morning, I guess, or good afternoon. I'm Howard Randall. I'm with the Central Plymouth County Water Districts. I'm the chair of the commission, and I'm also affiliated with the Old Colony YMCA as a board member.
Excellent, thank you. John Charles?
Bill Napolitano, Old Colony Planning Council, and I'm a resilience and sustainability planner.
Beautiful, thank you, Bill. Jean Charles?
Hi, everyone. My name is John Charles Zarawicki. I'm also with the consultant team at Baird Planning Group.
Excellent, thank you. And Liz Miller.
Hey everyone, I am Liz Miller. I'm Senior Community Relations Manager at Spoonfuls. We're a food recovery organization that just put a truck on the road serving organizations in parts of Plymouth County late last year and probably doing more of that late this year. I'm in transit and then we'll be lunching and listening. Thanks everyone.
Great, thank you. And Lauren Bartel.
Hi, I apologize. I can't get my camera to work. I'm Lauren Bartel with Old Colony YMCA.
Great, thank you. I think I got everyone. If I didn't, please jump in, but I think we're good. So first off, I want to say thank you to everyone who's here. I know it is absolutely wild and there's power outages, snow, so really appreciate everyone who can make it today. Courtney, Joanne, sorry, Courtney, you don't have to do anything. Joanne, if I could share my screen there for a moment, that would be great.
Sure. Oh yeah, I don't think I gave you permissions. Let me try again. I think you should be able to. I think I made you a co-host.
Yep.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, so I will go into slideshow mode there. So yeah, just welcome everyone, and thank you again for joining us. This is our 8th meeting, I think, but we are here on theme 6 today, food sovereignty and equity. And this is our second to last theme. So we only have one more left. And then what we'll be doing is we're going to be working to pick up any sort of straggling indicators that we didn't get to from other themes. So we'll be organizing conversations around those indicators that we didn't get a chance to get to, particularly some of the seafood indicators. For some of you who've been with us from the start, you might know that in about November, December, we added about 50 seafood fishing industry indicators, thanks to work that we had done with the Barnstable County Community Advisory Board. So we'll be going back through and trying to get information on those around Plymouth County, either through focus groups, conversations, or perhaps more community advisory board discussions. So we did our introductions, and again, we'll look at food sovereignty and equity, and then we'll have any more questions, comments at the end. This theme actually only has, sorry, it's not theme 2, theme 6, but it only has 9 indicators. They're pretty meaty indicators. It's a pretty meaty topic. We may finish early, but and we may finish the theme, which will be exciting because we haven't done that too often. So in relation to what food sovereignty and equity is, what they are, food sovereignty is really about food equity is about who has access to food and is that access equitable, or is food accessible only to people who can afford it, or only people who have transportation. Food sovereignty is more about, do you get to decide what food you eat? And that might start with simply, can you go to a grocery store and buy the food that you want and food that is healthy? It might also mean, though, that when you go to the grocery store, who is deciding what food you are able to purchase? So food sovereignty really runs along the entire supply chain, and it affects what we are eating every single day. And local food is one of those where currently we don't usually have a ton of access to local food, and that's a question of food sovereignty and how it affects us. One of the things I was thinking about for the chat as sort of our icebreaker is thinking about that sort of place-based food sovereignty. And if you are have any thoughts or anything that you want to share in the chat, thinking about what food most reminds you of Plymouth or Massachusetts. Or another way to look at it is if you lived anywhere else in the world, what food from home would you miss? I'm going to be totally honest. I'm in Ireland at the moment. I miss really good tomatoes and I miss Cheez-Its, and that's the truth. But this idea of food sovereignty, again, thinking about do you have access to healthy food? Do you have access to culturally appropriate food? Is that food sustainable? So if anyone has any thoughts they'd like to share about either food that reminds you of Plymouth, Massachusetts, or if you lived somewhere else, what would you miss or what have you missed? Some of the questions that we're going to be getting at once we get to the end of this theme is we're really going to be looking at what does food sovereignty mean to you in the context of your community? Whose voices are leading the way in shaping food systems? That's a question of both equity and sovereignty. And are these voices representative of the communities they represent? How can food systems respect cultural food traditions while staying sustainable? And what changes would make food systems feel more equitable in Plymouth County? So those are the kind of the big questions we're going to look at the end of theme 6 once we've got our answers and we've confirmed those. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to see if anyone has any questions before we start diving into the indicators themselves. All right. And I see cranberries would be missed. That's a great point. I do miss cranberries too. So yeah, add some things into the chat there. Foods you'd miss, or again, foods that make you think of Plymouth, that kind of place-based food sovereignty, cultural foods. Stuffed quahogs, love those. All right, and with that, I think if we have no questions, Joanne, if you would like to share the notes page. While Joanne is doing that, I'm just going to throw out that I didn't know bar pizza was a thing until I moved to Westport, and now I love bar pizza. And anyone who doesn't know what bar pizza is, Edible CMAS or South Coast, whichever edible, they did a whole article on it, and you're missing out. But I might have been the only one that didn't know about it.
Or you could just talk to me and I can give you like the top 10 on the South Shore.
There you go. If only I'd known, Joanne.
We do once a month, we do a bar pizza day at OCPC at work.
Oh my God, that's amazing. That's like a cultural resource right there.
We're big
That
fans.
is going to go into the carrot. All right. So our first question is 44. Looking at inequities in the food system. Does our community acknowledge systemic barriers for small-scale BIPOC and indigenous fishers? Do we have any programs, policies, projects, any organizations that are acknowledging systemic barriers for anyone really working in our fishing industry, whether that's processing, fishing?
One thing that I might throw, it's maybe a little tangential, is I know that our Herring Pond tribe in the Plymouth area is a big champion of the herring runs and access to waterways to be able to fish and maintain some of their traditions. So not quite the same, but I mean, they are advocates for removing some of these barriers.
I think that they would also be probably a good source of information. So we can speak to them about whether or not there is anything happening.
I'd offer that one of the biggest barriers is the lack of fish. We're struggling with the town of Kingston has taken down a couple of dams trying to get fish back into Silver Lake. We're struggling with the city of Brockton, who has drawn is not allowing enough water. Sometimes they can get fish in, but we can't get them out. So I don't think people fully realize how important the alewife and has been to this area in the past, and how decimated the fishery is today. The small fish serve as food for the cod and other fish that occupy that we fish for in Cape Cod Bay. So we really, at some point, need to address the barriers to restoring the natural fish that supported that stock. I would just offer that as a comment.
No, that's helpful. And so that lack of fish, sorry, I don't know enough about the sort of the exact ecosystem, but the alewife are food for the cod. There's the lack of cod. So it's that, and our alewife, they're in the bays and estuaries. They're not in the open ocean.
Yes, they are, and they return to fresh water to spawn, and then return to, I think, the ocean, obviously, in a cycle that happens annually. I think it perhaps starts in sometime in April, and when the fish come up the rivers. The industrial era harnessed a lot of the rivers that fed these ponds. So removing the dams is one way to try to restore the fish to the ponds in our area. I think town of Plymouth has done a lot of work to try to make that happen in some of their great ponds. So it's what many of our towns, particularly in Bristol County, and thrived on a very viable industry of collecting and even barreling and picking these fish and sending them around the world. But the numbers have dwindled tremendously.
This is going to come up to some extent in other indicators, but because we're talking about it here, I'm wondering about whether or not there's tribal representation in creating solutions around some of these issues. Lack of fish issues, are tribes being involved in sort of monitoring, assessing, and making decisions about how to address the lack of fish?
Yeah, it's a huge problem for those of us who work in the environment, the local environment. As I say, a lot of work's gone in to try to move some of the barriers. I just was reading the Silver Lake News, which is, I think, defunct. I came across a copy that's 45 years old, and in the town of Pembroke, it's showing all the people gathered at the fish run over there. There's a fish run in Middleborough off of 44. I didn't see a fish there this year, so it goes hand in hand, I guess, with environmental degradation. It affects not only the fish, but obviously PFAS is a growing issue with water, and contamination of soils is another great issue that will affect the growing of produce in our area.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any thoughts on systemic barriers for small-scale fishers, indigenous fishers, or any resources that are out there? If not, we can move on to the next one, Joanne. Okay, so Seafood 45. We engage impacted seafood workers in shaping policy and programs. We might be missing, I'm not sure if there's anyone in the room here who has some of this fishing industry specific knowledge. So we might be missing those voices, and we'll have to reach out to them afterwards. But if anyone does know anything about whether or not seafood workers are involved in policy and programs, we can put that in.
Well, obviously the quota systems that exist today impact them tremendously, and that gets to the dwindling fish that are off our shores.
Mm-hmm. And when the quota systems are put in place, people in the seafood industry are a part of that conversation, or are they generally reported to?
Well, I don't know how that works at the federal level. I do know somebody very closely connected to all of that, and who serves on an international board regarding fisheries. I could get his contact for you, and he might be able to answer that question. He's local. He's in Plymouth.
Yeah, that would be great. So we can follow up on that.
There was a state meeting, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, for local food policy councils where fisheries had a very good representation. I could look into who to follow up with, but I can't come up with any names at the moment.
Yeah, so it was a statewide conference for food policy councils.
Yeah.
And there was good fishing representation about 4 years ago. We can do some background.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. It's like charades.
Yeah.
Great. Any other policies, programs, projects, events, organizations that are working with seafood workers to get them involved in policies, making programs?
Obviously, when you speak of oysters or clams, many of those permits are regulated by the cities and towns that have water access, and I suspect that those may be limited in the number of permits and in the areas that they can fish, and may quantified. I'm sure with clamming, I think there's some finite limit today as to what you can take, let's say, as an individual. And there may be other quotas as it relates to commercial activities. If you want to do clam in Marshfield, you need to get a permit. So they will limit you as to what you can take. I don't know how that intersects with indigenous rights. I suspect that they may or may not be limited in the number that they could take and whether they need to be licensed.
Yeah, my understanding is that if you have a tribal ID, then you are allowed to fish, clam, harvest. That counts as your permit. You don't need any other permit.
Yeah.
So town permits are limiting. And again, some of the things we've heard in other counties are the impact Division of Marine Fisheries has on some of these quotas and closing fisheries. And it seems from what we've heard so far is that seafood workers don't often get they don't get pulled into any of the policy making or permitting, but are more told what to do. So
there is I know DMF does run a shellfish advisory panel. That's come up in some of my work in Duxbury. I don't know who sits on that, but I would assume hopefully there's some representation from the industry, so we can maybe look into that.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a great idea. We haven't heard anything like that come up yet in the other counties, but DMF has come up quite a bit as a key piece of this puzzle.
Yeah, and I would say the Central Plymouth County Water Commission is working with DMF to, we worked out a barge, the purchase of a barge that can be used to help access the towns in southeastern Mass to improve the access to fisheries.
Yeah, the hydro dredge. And DMF also works with local herring fisheries commissions to develop plans for rivers and streams.
Yeah.
To enhance the fishery. And it comes down to something you were talking about before, Rita. You know, it's all about flows in fisheries, and it's connected actually to regional water supplies, regional farming, you know, the adequacy of water and quality water. So it's all interrelated.
Yeah.
Who's on the herring commissions?
Usually the towns appoint local herring fisheries commissions. I know in West Bridgewater and Bridgewater, they have a joint commission, and in Lakeville and Freetown, they have a joint commission as well. And they'll work with marine fisheries to come up with 5-year river plans, river management plans.
So would it be similar to like a conservation commission for a town where members are appointed and they've got a term?
It's less regulatory. Like the Conservation Commission is a
Right.
very highly regulated thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is more or less stewardship, working with the Division of Marine Fisheries to be stewards of that river system.
Okay.
But some of them that they do have regulatory powers, some of the commissioners, depends how your commission is set up, whether it's an advisory committee or a commission.
But certainly they limit, Bill, the take you can take out of, let's say, the spot on Route 44 in Middleborough. You know.
Yeah.
There are people watching. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, that's great. And again, herring commissions, I know they've come up a couple times here, but that's sort of a unique format. And it would be interesting to see who's on those boards, because again, this is really going to be about, are the people who are most affected and impacted by the policies and some of those environmental forces, are they in a position where they can shape some of those policies and programs?
Brenna, I'm sorry, Rita. Brenna, I'm just going to put you on the spot for a minute. Are you guys, or Jill, are you guys mapping or identifying which communities have herring commissions and or agricultural commissions?
Yeah, I was just listening, and I thought this was like a very interesting component. I'm not sure we have identified the herring commissions in the communities, but in terms of food, like it's my understanding that herring are like sort of off limits for catching. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say that in general, yes.
Yeah.
Because of the limited numbers, the Jones River Watershed Association does an annual count. They use volunteers for that. The Pine du Bois is someone you could reach out to who's very knowledgeable about that. She's the director there right in Kingston. But it's surprising. There are a couple of wonderful books. One is called The Cod and the other The Herring. And they're short little books that chronicle the history of those two fish, in the 1500s when the Basque were over here fishing, they described as being able to walk across the back of codfish. And the herring book also chronicles the destruction of large-scale net Russian ships off the coast of the big rivers that the Hudson or the below that they've just wiped out a huge percentage of the fish stock.
Yeah, it might be an important component to include, Jill, because it does, even though they're not really a a source for food now.
Yeah.
Traditionally, they're very important to our indigenous people, and
Yep.
Melissa can tell us more about that. But also, it's about supporting that whole fishery system
Yeah.
in
Sure.
general.
Yeah.
Sure. What was the agricultural? Did you say agricultural council or commission?
Commission. So there's
Yep.
some of our communities, many have local agricultural
Yes.
commissions.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe we have gone through and documented that. And then in relation to this conversation, I was wondering, do communities work with, or would it be relevant to the work Marion Institute is, like, as Howard mentioned, the Jones River Watershed Association, and there's the North-South River Watershed Association, based in Norwell, that serves different communities. I think they have a very good handle on herrings in the area, but I don't know, sort of like regulation-wise, politically, like how communities interact with those nonprofit organizations.
Yeah.
Different. I don't want to take up too much time. We can talk about this offline more in detail, but different in different communities. So, for example, the town of Kingston and the Jones River Watershed Association have a really good working relationship on a lot of issues. Plymouth has multiple watershed associations, very kind of specific to certain like pond areas in town. So it's kind of a little bit all over the place generally, but overall they are very well organized statewide. They do have like a Southeast Watershed Action Alliance, which brings them all together for Southeastern Mass, and then they've got the state group, which is kind of your Mass Rivers folks.
Yeah, and I would say that that's actually one of the part of the next steps for us. Those water associations all came up in theme 1, where we were talking about water quality protection. So theme 1, and that's where the herring commissions might fit in. I think they are a really important part of it. And again, we're not just looking at the food. The carrot isn't just looking at sort of the food itself, but it's looking at the systems around our food production that are supporting food production, including natural resource protection, so that we have that resilient food system, that we have the ability to produce food in the next 10 years. So herring commissions might actually also belong really back in theme 1. But that will be something that will be coming back to our community advisory board to help us confirm these findings. And then that'll be work that we'll be doing with Baird as well. And I'm just looking at that specific indicator around water quality protection. I think we had 7 or 8 different water quality organizations, associations, and that's really significant. So I think that's a good question about how collaborative are they? What is that networking? Is it informal? Is it formal? Those will be the kinds of things that when we confirm our findings, when we go to score, we'll be looking at, how networked are these efforts and collaborative. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great take, Rita, and show how important they are to the overall food system, the health of our food system.
Yeah.
And even calling out a couple of these things, not everybody's going to have an AgCom, not everybody's going to have a herring commission. In fact, there's not many of those at all. But to put them in there as a call out, as an example of local stewardship working with a state program, to try to preserve a resource that, as part of the food chain is incredibly important. That's the other thing.
And especially, and again, this is where the carrot work that we're doing in the different counties, there's this ebb and flow of information, but, every other county so far has struggled with the relationship with DMF. And if the herring commissions, again, are a structure that has been effective to look at some of these literally upstream issues that are affecting food and fishing, then it's something that, we can use as a guide to share with other counties. And also, again, a lot of the work around agriculture and environment have been sort of segregated and siloed. But when we start talking about resilience, the two are so interconnected. Again, it's hard to even decide which indicator do these belong, and it's really all, many of them. So
yeah, and I think you'll find outliers. We have in Lower Plymouth and Wareham, there are the saltwater trout, I guess, or associations that that's another resource that is very endangered. I'm familiar with Monpont Pond, and there are a lot of people fishing there. But as things get polluted, the taking of local fish is really at risk. Whether it's, I think, elevated mercury or some other issues of cyanobacteria or whatever. Take them off the table, if you will, as potential sources for self-sufficiency.
Mm-hmm. I do want to just note that there's quite a few people that came in after we started. Thank you, everyone who's shown up today. And just to let you know, we are working on theme 6 of the carrot, which is food sovereignty and equity. And I can pop the document. This isn't the notes document exactly that Joanne is currently using, but it has all the same indicators. So if you want to follow along, you can see. Okay, let's move to the next one there, Joanne. 46. So in Plymouth County, are there any policies, projects, or programs that are addressing housing, permits, healthcare, and immigration barriers in the seafood workforce? And I want to call this out because we're going to talk a little bit about we're going to talk a lot about social determinants and some of the other questions in this theme. But the carrot doesn't necessarily call out some of these very specific issues for the farming workforce or any other food system workforce. So we are open to any resources related to anyone in the food system for this question. Housing, permits, healthcare, and immigration barriers. Is that on anyone's radar? Has anyone heard anyone talking about it?
Yeah.
Are we asking these for non-seafood as well too, Rita?
Yes, sorry. That's what I wanted to add on, is that again, we'll get at some of the what you would consider classic social determinants of health, which we'll call out, but the carrot doesn't actually have a matching one for the seafood. So that's why I would open up this specific question to the food workforce in general. So that could be farmers, agricultural workers, food processors, anyone that is working in food.
Well, historically, Bristol County, Plymouth County, it seems to me that we've had a lot of Portuguese-speaking people, Cape Verdean people in the industry historically, and to the extent they would be discriminated against as to housing and others, I guess that we would have to consider that. And I guess how does it relate to immigrant workers? What type of proof are any of these food sources required in order to use immigrant labor?
Yeah. Oh, Jared?
The Plymouth, and they could have individuals in their programs that work in food, but these are available to the public. The Plymouth Area Coalition for the Homeless just opened the first family shelter a week or so ago with a ribbon cutting. Father Bill's in Mainspring has an office in Plymouth, but they are planning to open a resource center that's going to mirror what they have opened in Brockton and Quincy. NeighborWorks Housing Solutions has offices throughout the South Shore. They have Kingston, Brockton, Quincy, with a number of programs. These are all that could support those that are particularly in food, but they also, particularly Father Bill's in Mainspring, also has kitchens and food programs within their organizations. I know Old Colony YMCA has housing and food programs in Brockton as well. That's off the top of my head of who we've worked with in terms of these. And then healthcare in Plymouth, health imperatives. They have women's clinics, but it's not to say they couldn't support food care workers. They have 3 over on Camelot Drive, and they have shelters in an undisclosed location in Brockton. BAMSI does as well throughout the state.
Beautiful, thank you.
If anyone is part of those organizations, please add more to those, but these are the ones off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Jared, so you said Father Bills have kitchens and food programs, as in like upskilling or just like job training type stuff, or is it just available to use for folks?
They're for those who are housed in their resource centers.
Gotcha.
But they also take in food donations to support those. They have in the resource centers, it's 3 different. So they have permanent housing, emergency, and then temporary. And so I believe those kitchens support all 3. I'm sure there's requirements on those. They bring in volunteers to help, and they'll connect with private companies for volunteering and such in those. And they're looking to mirror this with plans in Plymouth from the last I had connected. Dennis, our CEO, Dennis Carmen, has been much more involved on that side. I'm the director of development. I'm beginning to get more involved, but they do this in Quincy as well. And then they also have workforce development programs that we have collaborated on before to support housing opportunities.
Thank you.
And just sharing a few sort of real life examples of how some of these issues are impacting people across Massachusetts and southeastern Massachusetts. On the Cape, we heard how in order to have a permit for an aquaculture permit, to have an oyster farm, you have to have a residence in that town, which is becoming an issue because of affordable housing. And for generational transfer, the daughter of a current oyster farmer would like to take it over, but isn't able to get a house in that town. So we're not seeing it being addressed, but it's definitely an issue. Permits, again, Barnstable County, sometimes the whole permitting process is tricky, hard to navigate, and we haven't seen any food-specific support. Healthcare, this one, I'm not sure that there's anything specific, but we know that it can be tricky with income levels and what you can qualify for in Massachusetts and afford. Immigration barriers. There were issues with J1 visas and some of the really important visas for our agricultural workers. And then the other one, that I believe is still true, but and I don't know if people know this, but the minimum wage doesn't apply to agricultural workers. I don't know if that's the same for anyone in the seafood business, but the agricultural workers are at a lower minimum wage than other workers in the state. So that can have a really big impact. So those are the ways that this comes up, and we haven't seen sort of a collective effort on these. So wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't an organization doing some of these things specifically, but that's how it impacts in sort of real life.
And I imagine probably quite a few of our food-related businesses are small businesses, and in general, small businesses always struggle with benefits like healthcare and costs of permitting and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously, the cost of farmland is out of reach of most people.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, Rita, this is Jill. I was wondering if I could just share one comment or something we heard regarding the permits for the oyster farming. So I like how somebody put learn more. One thing we had heard was about the local residency of the permits, but we heard about it in light of it remaining kind of an industry for local folks versus like maybe a nationwide or worldwide corporation being able to come in and do that business, if you know what I mean. So we heard it in that context, whereas it made it seem as if, you know, a permit, having a local residency was designed for a certain benefit to provide for local folks to have you know, those jobs and that kind of income or opportunity. So I like how it's like learn more, right? Because with everything, there's probably a couple sides to it all. And where the future is, you know, we shall see, right? So interesting to hear about this and learn more.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the conversation in Barnstable County was coming from that sort of next generation of farmers and talking a bit about, is this policy still relevant? And we didn't get into, that's the question, and it's town by town. And you know, does it require home rule petitions? Does it, you know, what does it require to change it? So I think the learn more is a really good point, and that, you know, why does it exist? Maybe for exactly that reason. So but what we find as well is that part of the problem, this is something I've experienced more so in the world of small food, generally not specific to seafood, is that there's a lot of these instances that are happening for individuals or very small businesses, and they don't have the ability and capacity to pursue it further. So that's where understanding what's going sort of on across the county, how much these issues are being addressed. We know they're issues, but if there's no one to sort of organize and then advocate, it's a lot of times you end up just losing the fisher or the farmer or the small business. So
and I think it's safe to say when it comes to clams or oysters, even lobsters, it really is. I would bet the vast majority of it is not being consumed here in Bristol County. It's all you have to do is take a trip on the expressway in the morning and see the small refrigerated trucks that are headed into Logan to ship these products all over the world.
Yeah. All right, and that does come up in others, is, you know, again, that access, and not to remove that, you know, opportunity for revenue for those seafood businesses, but it's looking at, and it's, you know, the additive, can we also get access more locally? All right, Joanne, will we go on to the next? All right, we are looking now again at this broader food system question around, does leadership commonly and publicly acknowledge, identify inequities, injustice, and barriers in the local food system? So we looked at this one, seafood specific, and this is really more broad. Is anyone talking about inequities, injustice, barriers in the local food system, advocating for food system stakeholders, policies, programs, projects? Is there anything going around? Are there any, is there any leadership that we should, you know, note, people or towns, organizations, people that are leading the charge on this?
I think as it relates to perhaps Native Americans, you might check with the local conservancy in, I think they're in Mashpee, a land conservancy. I know that there were some issues regarding access to gather seaweed and to cultivate seaweed. And I met somebody a few years back who was particularly studying that for the indigenous population.
Thank you. And you know, just as a sort of a prompt to try and think about what resources are out there, really thinking about who in your community is experiencing inequity in the food system. You know, some of the most vulnerable community members, children, elderly, um, who has barriers to getting food that they need, that they want? And is it being discussed? Is it being highlighted? Is it being addressed?
I mean, I would say your sort of most recognized disadvantaged groups, like your low income households, your 65 plus populations, generally are well acknowledged as, you know, facing some of these inequalities. I think there's a lot of organization around the emergency food system in general, like the Meals on Wheels is like a really well-run, oiled machine in all of our communities individually, with the councils on aging often being responsible for delivering those. I'd say that's probably a strength, but then I don't know what a model of perfection would look like. I'm sure there's room for improvement.
So I think that, so what I'm hearing is councils on aging are looking at barriers for that, for the elderly, and it feels like they're fairly well networked, and making sure that they're advocating for the elderly across Plymouth County to the extent that you kind of know.
Yeah, and not just the 65 plus, but also often those who are homebound and disabled as well. They often serve the needs of those as well too, particularly with transportation and things.
I can just speak in terms of Abington. We now have a Growing Greener committee that was formed out of our MVP 2.0 grant, where we're currently in the planning stages of how community gardens will be built in town, but we do have a plan for excess produce to go to our local food pantry, and it's being thought about and considered in that project, that community project that we're doing. So
thank you. I'm just wondering if Christine or Jared, if there's anything, it feels like this might speak to some of the work that you both do. Not to put you on the spot if you don't have anything to add, but.
So not so much around Indigenous issues, but like we have had quite a bit of support around, like during the SNAP crisis recently, from the city of Brockton, as far as convening local organizations that are working to fight food insecurity, and also liaising with local donor to help provide additional funds for the local food pantries. But I think those are, yeah, I'll just leave it there. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
United Way is on the state level, and then locally, the state level conjoined to do something similar that what Brockton is, what the city of Brockton, the Eastern Bank Foundation has done through the United Response Fund, and locally with Brockton and Plymouth being larger areas, we have a much larger percentage of not just population, but those on SNAP and projected to be on SNAP. I think it was just over 75,000. And so we had awarded grants to 16 nonprofit partners throughout the county. In addition to that, we convene the Brockton Area Hunger Network. So that's a large number of nonprofits who gather each week. Our CEO, Dennis, runs those. And I know Catholic Charities, we've worked with Old Colony YMCA, and then there's a subgroup, the Brockton Area Cooperative, that the Boys and Girls Club Metro South is on, Massasoit Charity Guild,
Cafeterias.
Yes, the first one I should have said, Charities, and I think there's one more. They have they're as the direct service providers in food security programs. They in their I think that's their fourth or fifth year that they have a program with a universal intake, and those who go to food pantries, they can use a card. Christine, you probably could speak to more on that, and I'm sure those involved with them could. There's probably much more details to it, but instead of individuals having to take intake forms and staff having to continually update those, especially if it's a small food pantry at a church, they can go to each of these organizations and use one card and attend. So I've been interested in seeing how that could be applied to the Plymouth area next, but that is a few of what we're doing in addition to partnering with this year 12 non-profit partners with food programs.
Yeah, and I think the exciting part about that program is really some of the next steps efforts that they're trying to have funding support for is to be able to kind of look at the numbers to tell the story about who is participating in the pantries. Because having the card doesn't limit the number of pantries you can go to. You can still go to all of them, but I think it's going to help us really understand the degree of food insecurity that we're seeing.
Great. Thank you both.
Yeah. How does any of that relate to those who are homebound? Who's serving that segment? I think some of the food pantries may be delivering to people, or who's serving that segment?
Charity Guild does routine deliveries for clients.
So do the councils on aging, like your local senior centers or potentially Old Colony Elderly Services. It all depends, I think, on where they fall in the benefit scheme and stuff.
I don't want to say if they do or not, but maybe the South Shore Community Action Council. I know they have transportation for qualified populations. They're the larger food pantry in Plymouth, but if it's not one now, I believe it has been before. For food delivery. Then you get into transportation. I know that's a whole nother conversation. Yes, Old Colony Elder Services as well.
And two, just planting the seed for sort of the intent of this question too, and again, just thinking about the dynamics, the power dynamics are what food sovereignty and food equity are getting at. So, we've got organizations that are really addressing these injustices and barriers, and then just pushing on this question as to whether leadership are really identifying and acknowledging those regularly. And so, that's something that we see less of. We see people responding to it, but it's not always being acknowledged outside of the organization at leadership levels as well.
I guess it depends on what you mean by leadership.
Yeah, it does. And so I think there's
if you're
layers
talking
of
about
leadership.
political leaders, there's kind of different.
I think that, yeah, I think like there's kind of that municipal leadership, there's regional leadership. I think the South Coast Food Policy Council, certainly for Bristol County, would fall into this indicator where we're regularly identifying, acknowledging. But leadership happens at many levels. So that's why I think that, just looking at it sort of from a holistic point of view and thinking about where is leadership happening, and how is it also affecting those power dynamics. Thank you, Courtney, and
Yeah.
thank you, Jill, and to those who've joined us and have to leave.
I would add too, who knows of the people in need in their community anymore? You know, the state has taken up a lot of the activities. I have a bag full of town reports that date back to the early 1900s, and town meeting would appropriate shoes for widows' children and cords of wood for others. I think there's a tremendous disconnect in at the local level as to who the people in need in their community are, and what you can do to change that.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, we'll move to our next question. This is about, are there planning and implementation steps to correct inequities in the food system based on listening sessions? Is there anyone out there having listening sessions? To your point, Howard, and that was a good segue for the people that are most affected and impacted. Is there an opportunity for them to share their experience?
In some instances, yeah, I would say some of our large healthcare providers are doing community food assessment, sorry, not food assessments, but community health assessments, of which, you know, food access is a component of. So I think there's a little bit being done by the kind of healthcare providers. I know the town of Plymouth is also running their own health assessment right now. I think they're calling it a health and community needs assessment. So in some instances, I think yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And that is what we've seen so far is that it is the healthcare organizations that are doing this most frequently. And one of the next indicators we'll talk about specifically social determinants of health. And that's something that we're seeing being addressed and measured and information collected by those healthcare workers or organizations. And you know, if listening sessions are involved, that's fantastic. And Town of Plymouth, would you say, are they doing listening sessions?
I believe they did focus groups and a survey. I'm not entirely sure about the detail, but yeah.
Any other takers on this one?
If this may or may not constitute as a listening session, but as part of our evaluation of those applying for United Way investments, we actually have volunteers go and visit nonprofit partners and sites. And so they're going to visit specific programs. Now, who they speak with may be dependent on the populations and the program, but I don't know if Christine's still in here, but they'll go and they'll visit the Brockton Food Pantry, or they'll visit, maybe visit Charity Guild if Charity Guild applies. So these are volunteers from businesses, community members. You know, it's open for anyone to participate, so there's no barriers for anyone. And they may even connect with participants of programs, depending on that. You know, and we don't, staff, we don't have any. We help organize, but it's all volunteer driven. So volunteers organize all that as well. If that constitutes as a listening, they go and learn about the programs and engage them. It is for a grants process, but each year we have people return to go and learn about programs, and this is from Brockton to Plymouth, Abington, down to, I haven't had Carver and Middleborough in a few years, but they are able to, if that counts.
Yeah, no, we'll throw it in there for sure. And again, if there's a way to get any more information on sort of who is spoken to in that process, I mean, again, I think that's a great approach. And then again, just thinking about that kind of final pieces, are the people most impacted, are their voices entering the equation as well. Yeah, and I'd open this up even more and just ask, sort of from people's own personal experience in your towns, are towns having public listening sessions? Is it something that's regularly practiced at all?
All our municipalities are doing public listening sessions all the time, but I wouldn't say I've ever heard of any in our region doing anything related to food specifically. So it's usually in connection to like a formal planning process, like a master plan or a housing plan, something like that.
Yeah.
But all of those would have listening sessions.
Yep, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's a, I would say there's an opportunity for a Mr. Rogers a moment here. Who are the people in your neighborhood? We have Saturday meetings at the library, but mainly to perhaps to explain projects that are anticipated to come up at a town meeting, or perhaps talk about local history or things of interest like that. But I don't think I've ever seen one dealing with food in any sense.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and you've just reminded me, I just saw NOFA Massachusetts has a new grant. And I don't know, Joanne, if this is just something to think about in terms of public engagement for this project, but
Yeah,
it's called, can't remember what it's called, but it's a grant that is providing people $200 to host a neighborhood meal. And they're hoping that the money will go towards local food. And the idea is that, exactly to your point, Howard, in a couple of these indicators, is that it feels like we know our neighbors less and less. And the hope is, they said, that you get bonus points if you invite a few people that you haven't met before, people a little bit further down the road. And really speaking to this idea within this project specifically, that resilience is so related to the strength of our social infrastructure, which has a lot to do with knowing your neighbor. So I think that is something that's being recognized as a loss in other places as well.
Yeah. Brockton Public Library, I just saw the other day. It's not really a listening session in a sense, but they're doing monthly drop-ins for like pick up a brown bag meal. So it's kind of like this little community thing. There's one coming up, but it seems like a pretty neat idea. I don't know if they're providing resources at the same time as people pick stuff up.
That's a great one to note as well, and we can look into it a little bit further and see. But that's a great resource generally. All right, will we move to the next one? Okay, this one is getting at that more specific social determinants of health. So this question is, who in Plymouth County is addressing social determinants of health, particularly for historically disadvantaged community members? Social determinants of health would be considered economic stability, neighborhood and built environment, healthcare access and quality, education access and quality, and the impacts of your neighborhood and built environment. It's usually considered fairly specific indicators related to those kind of 5 main areas. And I don't know if there's anyone who works with social determinants of health more regularly on here who can add any more to that. Or we can look at this indicator and list out what are the resources in Plymouth County around social determinants of health. And I think, Joanne, the few that you mentioned above as well probably apply. The community health needs.
The community health needs assessments.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for joining.
I mean, there is probably like a whole constellation of stuff here. I think that, if we just talk about education access and quality, I mean, there are just so many programs and people working in that area, especially in the greater Brockton area in particular, I think.
I think it would be interesting here, particularly because our numbers are a bit small today and dwindling. Maybe Joanne and anyone else who might know is, who are going to be some good sources of information for this, who we could reach out. Again, healthcare organizations are often the ones that we're seeing taking the lead on measuring social determinants of health. And then we, could maybe consolidate some of the other resources that are out there, organizations that are addressing them.
Hmm.
You might know more. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, Jared, you might know more, but like some of our biggie hospitals in the area, Bethesda Vale, Deacon East Plymouth, Brockton Neighborhood Health Center. We've also got, Brockton Hospital and Good Samaritan.
Good Samaritan's now Boston Medical South.
That's right.
Yes.
Yep. I was about to say that's not what it's called anymore.
But I still can do that. And then Brockton Hospital is Signature Healthcare.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
I was going to say, did Project Bread do a study on this too? To see kind of the root cause of health problems due to food inequity? I thought I remembered something about that. It might be something to look up. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I know South Shore Health, like that group, has done a community health needs assessment where food access has come up.
Yeah. Several of our councils on aging have been doing either age-friendly needs assessments. Food doesn't really come up in those. But in general, it talks about housing, transportation, a lot of things that relate to social determinants.
Yeah, and I think this is also, it is that kind of broader look at is if we know that these social determinants of health are part of the root cause of inequities in the food system. It is that broader, like who's measuring social determinants of health and then who's doing something about it. So going broader is perfect. We don't have to worry about it being specific to food.
I mean, your municipalities and your regional planning agencies are doing work related to some of these things. So, for example, every community will have a housing production plan, and that's looking specifically at trying to address housing access.
I think it sounds like for this one too, it's going to be a question of like when we get to scoring is how interconnected are these efforts, and again, in what way do they, specifically address food or indirectly address food as well? Okay, well, we go to the next one, Joanne. All right, so this is around a question around whether or not in Plymouth County there are organizations or programs or projects where individuals and organizations from historically disadvantaged backgrounds are supported and empowered to collaborate and create solutions. So this is the indicator I was referencing back when we were talking about the herring commissions and the, I think tribal organizations would be, one of these sort of groups of community members that have been impacted and disadvantaged. Are they a part of the solutions? Are they being invited into the conversation and coming up with, policy changes, solutions, and other organizations as well? I think that, sort of the common phrase these days is, do they have a seat at the table? And who is making sure that they have a seat at the table?
The silence is deafening.
Mhm.
I can probably, I mean, and I don't know, but Brenna, I don't know if, yeah, Brenna's on here still, but I think generally speaking, in a lot of the planning projects that we do around housing, transportation, there's a lot of emphasis on public engagement, but there's not much resource put into it. And a lot of historically disadvantaged groups are very difficult to get engaged in these sorts of planning projects because you need to go to them, which is a lot more time intensive, or you need to do translations, or you need to get interpreters, or you need to, you know, diversify when you're holding public meetings because not everybody can make it during the daytime. So I think I would probably say that there's, in planning in general, probably a lot of focus on including folks from disadvantaged backgrounds, but in terms of there being resource available to actually properly make an effort to engage, I'd say it's probably lacking on that front. But I don't know. Others may have a different perspective on that.
No, that's
Yeah,
really helpful.
unfortunately, I kind of echo you on that, Joanne.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kevin?
I can add for the town of Abington. We did surveys at the food pantry for previous plan, and I mean it's the distrust in government. If you see somebody wearing somebody coming from town hall, it's kind of tough
Yeah.
at this time. So I think that's a barrier.
Mhm. I think it's a good point. That's something that's come up several times is the trust factor. And that's, I think, even worse now. But
Yeah, I would say with the
oh yeah.
distrust, unfortunately, like I've seen in engagement that even well-meaning people are shying away from engaging with more marginalized group because there is a sense of fear that if you had an event that gathered marginalized groups, that could put them in danger.
Right.
I think one of the best. Now, this is an area so far that we've had not a lot of resources available so far. A couple things that were brought up in the Bristol County conversation too were the formats, whether it's language as a barrier, format of some of the ways that people are being asked to participate. And that again includes language, timing, a lot of lingo and jargon, or representation. The Pecasset Pokanoket representative that we had on the South Coast Food Policy Council was saying that it's not sort of conventional to just have one person represent. And that's again, I think this is really looking at, you know, we're seeing this more and more with environmental issues. So something like what you were talking about, Howard, at the start is, you know, looking to some of those regenerative solutions, some of the indigenous solutions, and really working hard to see how can we work in a way that does, you know, it's not our table, but we're all building a table together kind of thing. And I just want to throw out there, one of the best examples we've seen so far is the Community Economic Development Center in New Bedford. And they work with Mujeres Victoriosas, which is a grassroots organization. And they work really well together in developing programming for people who are part of the Mujeres organization.
We do have, I mean, I will say that Brockton does have some very strong organizations that try and bring in, not necessarily disadvantaged, but so like the Cape Verdean Association of Brockton has a lot of programs and services for the Cape Verdean community. Similarly with like Haitian community partners. And they're each, or for example, even the NAACP in Brockton has a lot of programs. So not necessarily disadvantaged. Some of their programs do focus on, you know, disadvantaged folks within their community, but more broadly, those are pretty strong. But some of them are more successful with working with government organizations and things than others. Some of them just kind of get on with it, serving what their community really needs.
And I think those are probably good resources to list here, Joanne. Like they're, you know, part of this puzzle for sure, empowering individuals and organizations to collaborate and create solutions outside of government sometimes as well.
I can't help but note that, it's enough when we talk about disadvantaged, is the diet of some individuals versus others because of economic status a disadvantage? And I think you'd have to say yes. And where's that education, or where's the resource that can offset that? We talked about fish. I think they recommend you have fish twice a week for healthy living, and but who can afford it? I see it a lot like modern medicine. We have a pill for that, but nobody's saying I can prevent it, and if you did this, and so we have a lot of prevention hanging around. We get food to people, but is it necessarily nutritious? And are we changing anybody's eating habits as a consequence of it?
Yeah. Exactly. All right. We've got a few more minutes, Joanne. If I've lost track of where we are because my notes is in a different order.
I think we've got one more
Okay.
indicator. No, two more indicators.
Okay.
And we've got 123. So we're wrapping up soon. We've got a few more minutes.
So we've got 47, and what was the other one?
84, CA 84.
Okay, so we can really deal with these together because they're asking the same question. Are there any programs, projects, or any explicit policy goals to reduce BIPOC or youth unemployment rate by job matching in the local food system, including seafood? So any youth employment programs, any pipelines into food system jobs, anything that comes
I think
to mind?
so the Duxbury Maritime School, I think, has some programming around maybe fishing. So that's something to look into. Also Bristol Aggie.
Yeah.
The Atlantic Resiliency Institute.
Oh, where are they?
Marshfield.
Oh.
They're in their second year. Laura Brait, who's the director of the Marshfield Chamber, is got a very specific title. She's director of like industry partnerships. They focus on blue economy and they're adjacent to food, more workforce development and climate resiliency, but much of the data is used for in the seafood industry.
Interesting.
So they're very new. But they're approved for a federal grant for their program. Another one, maybe not directly seafood related, is the Salvation Army in Plymouth did have a youth development program. I'm not as familiar with the actual program itself, but it had, I don't know how young it is for employment, but those are two that I know of off the top of my head.
Great, thank you.
There are some like youth specific programs run by like the Brockton Career Center. But I don't recall seeing anything specific to food in particular.
I know oh wait, who was it? Actually, I just totally lost it. Sorry. Oh, Boys and Girls Club. I don't know if
right.
I think we've heard of maybe the Blue Spoon Cafe, or I'm not sure if they have programming around culinary things.
Don't they have an aquaculture program established now in Plymouth?
The Boys and Girls Club does.
Yes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Is it aquaculture or is it the hydroponics that you're referring
Well,
to,
maybe it's
Howard?
hydroponics.
Yeah, they're pretty strong on the
okay.
hydroponics.
Hydroponics, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Their freight farms are really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
They jokingly tried to lock me in there, but
You'd survive water and fresh food.
yes,
Yeah.
for a little bit.
Yeah.
They have after school nutrition programs and academic support, but the freight farms, what's produced goes out to food pantries, the Brockton's Farmer Market, as well as their Taunton kitchen. I believe the Taunton kitchen also has opportunities for businesses to use it as well, as a kind of like a culinary incubator. When Joanne, you were talking about that with Monica and Derek when we had met the other week, which I hadn't known before. I'm speaking with them in a week or so, so that was cool to learn.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of neat stuff.
I was just thinking, Farm Fresh Rhode Island, this is just an example of a cool program. Farm Fresh Rhode Island has a program specifically for youth, and they have a whole line of foods that are made by the youth kitchen. So they do a lot of canning and preserving and processing. But it's a really cool program, and I haven't seen many others like that. All right. I think we'll call it there. Did we got through all of them, right, Joanne? Don't scroll
We
down.
did, yeah. Yep.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for those of you who were able to stay on and to join in the first place, but we really appreciate it. And we will be coming back to you with our findings. And if you think of anything in the meantime, definitely let us know. And we'll see you again next month for our final theme.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you.